The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Star player schmoozing it up with the general manager on the field before a scrimmage. For most teams, that's, okay, just having a little chat. But what happened yesterday in Ashburn may mean something. It may mean nothing, but it may mean something. Terry McLaurin out on the field where he usually has not been during training camp because he is technically on the physically unable to perform list. But he was standing there talking to Adam Peters before the team scrimmage. And who wouldn't have wanted to be a fly on the wall for that? We don't know what was said, but does it mean that they are perhaps closer to working out a deal? I don't think anybody thought it would get to this point, but here we are. No contract yet for Terry McLaurin. They have 2 exhibition games left to go. And really not that many practices. They're off today. So there's not going to be a heck of a lot of time to get the timing down between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Sure, they had it last year, but they really haven't done anything together, at least officially. They may have done something in secret, but at least officially, they haven't done anything since May, since the offseason workouts in May. They didn't do it in minicamp because Terry wasn't there. And, it looks like this is not going to end well for Terry because the Commanders have the leverage here. They do. He's going to be 30 years old, which is really working against him. So worst case scenario for the Commanders is they say, well, you got a contract, play this year, and we'll see. And at the end of the year, he becomes a free agent. They can franchise him, and if it's worthwhile to pay him among the top 5 receivers in the league for 1 year, only a 1-year deal, then they do it. If not, they say, Guy Gesund, thanks very much. We love you. Great success, but we've got a successor picked out. And it may be somebody who pops up in the middle of the draft, just like McLaurin did in 2019. When he was taken in the 3rd round in 2019, I remember this well because it was seemingly typical of the way the team did business. Dwayne Haskins, who had been taken in the 1st round, 15th overall, which obviously turned out to be too high, even though he said the league done messed up. He complimented the team on taking McLaurin in the 3rd round, one of his teammates at Ohio State, which was pretty typical of the way they would do business. You know, if one of the star players, and he'd yet to be a star player and never was, but he was highly touted as a 1st-round draft pick, maybe the quarterback of the future, if he said, take this guy, they would do it. They would have Clinton Portis telling him who to draft, you know. Now, he was right in taking Sean Taylor for sure, but, you got your own personnel department. You got people who spend the year working on these things. You don't just turn it over to a player. So I thought, okay, yeah. Here's another big favor to a guy who they think is going to be great. Hadn't done anything yet, but they're doing a big favor to him bringing in a receiver from Ohio State. Well, as it turned out, Terry McLaurin turned out to be great, and Dwayne Haskins turned out to be tragic. He was cut before the end of his 2nd season, spent a year with Pittsburgh, and then died in an accident on a road in Miami. So here we are, and we're now looking at Terry McLaurin as one of the best players on the team, maybe the best. Certainly at his position, he's the best on the team. And, we're saying, we'd like to have him. They'd like to have him. They'd like to have him on the team. But, again, the leverage is all in favor of the Commanders. If he comes in and plays great this year, they can keep on the franchise tag, and it would mean that going into the 2028 season, he would be 2027 season, he'd be 32. That's old for a receiver. And they would probably let him walk and look for a different option, and maybe some fine that they get in the middle of the draft. So that's where they are. How much we read into that, I don't know, but it was an interesting scene. And both of them, this was not, naivete on either one's part, both of them had to know that the cameras were on them. So if Adam Peters wanted to avoid any speculation on that, well, he could have just bumped into Terry in the hallway and say, "Hey, bub, what's going on?" He didn't have to do that out on the field. And we'll see. But today would be a good day to get a deal done, wouldn't it? Team is off. They get back on the field tomorrow, which would be Thursday. And they have a few more days of preparation for the Cincinnati game. I can't imagine that McLaurin would play, even if he signed. But that would be a really good thing for however many show up. I don't know what kind of crowd they're going to have on Monday night, but that would be a feel-good to have Terry under an extension and everybody happy at this point. But the numbers appear to be pretty far apart. The team is in the 20s, and McLaurin and his agent are in the 30s. And I don't think the contract number is going to start with a 3. I think the contract number is more likely going to start with a 2, and that's probably the way it's going to be worked out. As for who's filling in the gaps for Terry McLaurin, so far not so good from the scrimmage yesterday, as we saw Jane Daniels struggle. I'm just going off of reports, but clearly he's missing him. He did have Deebo Samuel, and Deebo Samuel, remember this, and this is how everybody overreacts to everything. There are a couple of pictures of him as they wrapped up minicamp, and somebody said, "Oh, Deebo really looks fat." Well, he's a veteran receiver. He knows how to get himself in shape, and sure enough, he's shown up for training camp in shape, and this was the assessment yesterday from Dan Quinn of what he's seen.
He is in great shape. That was the one, I think, first that you could tell he really put the work in physically, but also from the neck up, learn a new system, being in different ones. It is different, than the system that he has been a part of. So I thought he really worked hard on that part. Maybe a silver lining is the extra time that he has now with Jaden. And so sometimes when, Noah and Terry aren't there and he gets more, sometimes there's unintended consequences that can take place that you see that's good. And I think that may be one of those that you're probably seeing now, Nick.
Well, the hinting around there from Nikki Jabala, who asked the question, is, and she didn't come out and say this, but the obvious implication is if Terry McLaurin holds out, which I don't think is going to happen, but if he's not ready to start the season, I mean, is Deebo Samuel number one? Is that a possibility? And you hear Quinn say something to the effect of silver lining here in that he's getting these reps as the number one guy. Again, we're in the middle of August, so this is a very clear question that has to be asked of Dan Quinn.
What is your level of optimism and or concern about where things stand with Terry?
Yeah. Look, you want everybody as the coach out on the field at every practice, every game. I also know that that's not reality either. And so I just try to make sure, man, just keep pouring into the guys, keep digging into it. But I know it is, part of our game where, you don't have everybody all the time. It does, in some ways, there's contingencies. How do you work? How do you feature guys? And so I was kind of referring to Deebo, maybe getting more connection time to go. But as far as where I'm at, I also I'm aware things happen, and you adjust, and that's kind of what coaching is, you don't have your full roster all the time, and you put yourself into those spaces pretty regularly, and then when those come up, you feel more normal doing that. When everything's healthy, you have to force it. When the injuries and things come up during this time of year, it happens naturally. Okay, let's feature, let's see what happens. And I like doing that too.
That's Dan Quinn, who's a bit more loquacious about these things. If you put this into Belichick speak, it's, I'm only here to coach the guys that are on the field. I can't coach guys who aren't here. That's the message there. So, you tie in the Deebo thing and you hear what Quinn has to say. That's how you got to move forward as a coach. You can only coach the people that are available to you to coach. Speaking of coaching, Dan Quinn maybe a little generous here, and Zach Ertz said something to one of the reporters yesterday. He's been around the league, of course, won a Super Bowl, Philadelphia. He's been in Arizona, and Dan Quinn has a level of security in that yesterday in this scrimmage that they had, the Burgundy versus Gold scrimmage. he let his assistants essentially be head coach. Now, one of them's already been a head coach before, Cliff Kingsbury, and probably will be a head coach again, most likely after this season. Joe Witt, who made the move up from defensive backs coach to defensive coordinator last year, he coached one of the teams yesterday. So you had, two guys there who aspire to be head coaches. Well, one of them's already been, may want to do it again, and Witt looking to become a head coach. And then defensive backs Tommy Donatel and also quarterbacks coach Tavita Pritchard moved up to become coordinators in this. So this was a little bit of a stepping stone for them. And this is how Quinn described the strategy behind that.
I think at the core, if you're a developmental coach, then you also want to develop the staff and give them chances to level up and to do things. I'd asked one of the coaches yesterday, who was into the coordinator role. I said, what was different? I had to make the cards right. I had to make this right, and had to organize the walkthrough. So maybe also, Chick, it gives some regard and appreciation for the next role, to what that could look like. But I think if we're going to say we're going to develop players, like, it starts with coaches first, and that starts with me. And I think if we rise the tide of the coaches and get them better, then of course that's going to filter down to the players. So I think of us as a developmental team, not just with players, but with coaches too. The fun part of coaching, one of the fun parts, there's a lot of them, is the game changes and you keep adjusting and you keep growing and you keep learning and finding out new ways to do it. If I would, the way that, from my years in the NFL, how it started to even like a training camp, it's so different. You know this. And so the adaptation, the seeing what's different, how to feature players differently, like, it's all fun to do that. So I think I appreciate Zach recognizing it, but I think of the coaches as developmental too, to say, can we get better at this spot? And all of us have some things to work on, coaches and players. But the 2 days like this gives new space to do different things.
Dan Quinn yesterday, and apparently got a big kick out of this scrimmage and the competitiveness of it, which is, what he's always pushing: competitive. No competition today as the team is off, and then they get back to practice tomorrow. This is going to be fun to watch, and I did not expect this to happen, but there's been a development in the John Gruden civil suit against the NFL, claiming that the league leaked emails to the media before Gruden was forced to resign as the Raiders coach in 2021. Team was 3-1 at the time. Where the emails came from? Seems to me it's pretty certain they came from Dan Snyder, and outstanding reporting from Don Van Natta about a year later when he reported that Dan Snyder knew that the league didn't like John Gruden. They wanted him out, even though he had a 10-year contract to coach the Raiders, even though he had won a Super Bowl. They didn't like him. So Snyder was under the gun. That was when the Washington Post was doing all the reporting about the toxic culture, and he was trying to save himself by, hiring people of color and hiring a woman to run broadcasting and everything he could. So he thought that he would leak emails. This is what Van Natta has reported, that these emails that were exchanged between John Gruden, who wasn't coaching at the time, he was working for ESPN, and Bruce Allen, the president of the team, contained some misogynistic and racist things in them that, once they came out, it was pretty clear that Gruden had to go. And Gruden won a round of this as the court said. It was a 5-2 ruling. The justices did not determine whether the league had leaked the racist, sexist, and anti-gay emails to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times at the time. And by the way, Snyder had recently hired somebody who had worked for the New York Times. But they found that the league's decision to force Gruden's complaint into closed-door arbitration proceedings overseen by Roger Goodell, the target of Gruden's civil lawsuit, was unconscionable. Of course it was. He was suing Goodell, and Goodell is doing the arbitration. And this is the way the league has done business for a long, long time. So the courts looked at this and went, wait a minute. This is how you do it? So now it's up to the league to see what's next. An NFL spokesperson said yesterday the league would petition the Nevada Supreme Court for a rehearing. If that fails, it likely goes to an appeal at the U.S. Supreme Court. Here's what happens in all of this. There is discovery. and we start to find out various things. Not that it matters all that much anymore now that Snyder is finally out the door, but we're going to, find out how this sausage was made, how these emails came to be leaked. There were something like 500,000 of them, and just about 13 of them happened to spill out to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. How did that happen? Gruden didn't address his coaching future yesterday when talking about this, but he said he's eager to return to coaching and, quote, "I die to coach in the SEC." He knows it's over in the NFL. There are teams that would like to have him. I'm sure Mark Davis would like to have him as coach of the Raiders again. I don't think that's going to happen. But this is going to be a get your popcorn ready if, in fact, it goes to this, because we're going to find out a lot more about what went on. The league was hoping to shut the door on Gruden, and the courts in Nevada said no. We don't know. We don't know if the league leaked the emails, but what we do know is when it came time for Gruden to file a complaint against the league, who did he have to encounter? The man who runs the league. Yeah, it's like, he just turned his chair around from being commissioner and faced the other way and became the arbitrator in a suit that was against him. So this is going to be fun to watch. And, not that we need to find out any more bad stuff about Dan Snyder, but there could be more to come. Coming up, this is an interesting situation that Fox has. The last two Super Bowls, the analysis has been done by Greg Olsen and by Tom Brady. To be fair to Brady, the game that Olsen did was a lot better than the one that Brady did, but it was the same two teams playing each other. But what's clear is, to me anyway, and I think a lot of people who watch football, is that Greg Olsen is a better analyst. And he got kicked to the curb when Brady came in with a $37.5 million contract. That would create an uncomfortable situation. But the two of them actually addressed the elephant in the room yesterday. We'll hear some of that conversation as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got Orioles preview today. We do it every Wednesday. Katie Griggs, team president, will join us. One of the things I have to ask her is, what do you do with a team that's gone sideways and was expected to do so well this year? I guess this is where team presidents earn their money, but we'll get to that. Coming up at 10:30, Greg Olsen was making the rounds yesterday. He's, of course, an analyst with Fox, used to be the number one analyst. I don't think I've ever seen a situation like this in broadcasting, but he's kind of stuck. He emerged, I think, as maybe the best of the analysts on TV. With the regression of Tony Romo. He ain't Tony Romo anymore. He's just a guy who says, "Oh, Jim, this is so exciting." And I think that Chris Collinsworth is still good, but he's been around a long time. He's in his mid-60s, time maybe for somebody younger. And then Greg Olsen, who has not been that far removed from the field, is still good. I mean, really good. And he got kicked to the curb when Tom Brady came in with his $37.5 million contract. It didn't used to work this way. It didn't. Even if you were a big name and a big star, you had to work your way up. Well, they took Brady and they gave him this contract, and he said, I'm going to just sit for a year. Okay, Olsen will do another year. And then it came time for Brady to step in. He had no experience. Other than, whatever rehearsals he had. And he's the number one guy and gets to do a Super Bowl in his first year. That's not earning your stripes. But he was such a big star and such a big name. I guess Fox liked the prestige of it. I don't think any more people watch the games because of him. It's just sort of a puff out your chest move. So Greg Olsen, who had not reached the stardom that Brady did, obviously, but had worked hard and had worked his way, through some lower level teams to get to the number one spot, and then had done such a great job, not only had to go down to the number two team, but he had to take a pay cut. And he wasn't making anywhere near $37.5 million like Brady did last year when he was with the number one team. But he's kept a stiff upper lip on this, though he has said he would like to be on the number one team. He would like to be calling the biggest games. There just doesn't happen to be an opening in the other networks at this point. They're not going to lose Troy Aikman at ESPN or anything like that. So he's doing what he's doing. But yesterday was kind of interesting. The two of them kind of addressed the elephant in the room here in that, Greg Olsen, who was the number one guy who called the Super Bowl 2 years ago, is now, well, I guess you have this in football too, but broadcasting shouldn't really work this way because you don't lose a step unless you get, a lot older in broadcasting. He's had to move down to the number 2. Brady is number 1. And here they are openly discussing what a lot of people speculate about the two of them. This was on a podcast hosted yesterday by Greg Olsen.
There's been a lot of speculation about our relationship, a lot of speculation about our working relationship. You and I have had many private conversations about it. I think people would be surprised at the friendship and the relationship we've built over the last 12 months or so. Something we used to try to preach with our kids all the time is you can compete against people, but in order to prop myself up, I don't have to pull you down, right? There is enough. You said it perfectly earlier. You said the concept of team in an individual world, the concept of team had been lost where, high tide raises all ships, where if the team does great, there's room for multiple people to have success. Obviously, there's been a lot talked about with you and I at Fox and whatnot. I think, and I'm not patting ourselves on the back by any means, I'm just using it as an example where you can be highly competitive and you can be highly motivated in a very competitive world that you and I now live in and still be incredible supporters of one another and still share information and still want to see each other do well. Like, I want you to talk about not just your journey now, but like all along your approach to team, to competition, to how you treated backup quarterbacks, how you now treat me, which is in a similar, all but different kind of world. Like, I think it's an important conversation. I've been very comfortable with sharing it with you and sharing with everyone else. Like, I'm cool. Like, I kind of think it's cool for you and I in this moment to kind of show like we can both want to be great. And it doesn't mean I want either of us to be bad.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think a lot of, even as you refer to that too, Greg, and I think so much about like my career journey as a football player, and I had competed in a lot of rooms, and a lot of the lessons I learned about competitive football started in college. And I was very lucky because it wasn't easy in college, and there were a lot of guys that were better than me, and there were a lot of guys that had more experience. And I just realized, and I had a great sports psychologist mentor that said to me, would you quit bitching and whining about what everyone else is doing and quit bitching and whining about how this quarterback gets his chances? And why don't you do the, and this is when I wasn't playing, it's my second, why don't you do the best with the opportunity you get? And I was like, man, it totally shifted my mind because before it was always me comparing myself to other people. And it was like, well, if he does bad and I do good, then it's good for me. And the reality I learned was it didn't matter who did good because there was a year, my third year, where I didn't play and we won a national championship. But I got a lot better because the only person I was focused on practice was myself and how I needed to prepare in case I was called upon and ready to go. Because I never knew when I was going to get my chance because I went to a place that was competitive. And when I started worrying about my opportunity and my chance, I just worried about the work I was putting into it. And I finally did get my chance in my fourth year, and I played pretty well. And I played my fifth year, I played pretty well. When I got drafted, I went to the Patriots. And I thought, man, I'm never going to get a chance. No, I didn't think that. A lot of people thought, you're in New England. You got Drew Bledsoe. He signed a 10-year, $100 million contract. Tommy, you're never going to play. And I was just like, what do you mean? I'm just going to work and I'm going to do what I always did, what I learned in college. And I knew that if I was ever going to get my chance, I was going to be ready to go. And I think that's how I've applied that as I've gone forward, because when I look in broadcasting, I was very much a rookie this last year, but I looked up to a lot of people that I thought, man, he does a great job. And you're obviously one of the greats already at such a young age. I want to be like Greg. I watched so much Greg Olsen broadcasting tape. And I just said, okay, well, what's he do that I really like that maybe I can apply to what I'm doing in my prep or my on air. And then other people that have been in this business a long time, because you're trying something that's totally new and totally different. And I would say I approach it very much like I did. And as long as this is my I think, general thought as we go about this in life. As long as I'm good with the man in the mirror that's looking back at me at the end of every day, I'm cool with it. I realize that not everyone's going to like it or love it. Some people may like it more than others, but I'm trying my best. And if I try my best for me, that's how we should look at life. Whether you're a broadcaster, a football player, or teacher, or coach, or parent, there's parents that probably come home and go, man, I suck today, at this. But you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, how can I be a little bit better tomorrow?
Okay, the Stuart Smalley Act is fine, and I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, I'll work my tail off to be the best. All that's fine. But let's recognize how Tom Brady got to be the number one analyst. He got to be the number one analyst by being a great football player. That's how he got it. Now, all the credit in the world for winning 7 Super Bowls and playing at a high level at the age of 45. No question about it. But it's not like you worked your tail off in broadcasting to become the number one guy. It doesn't work that way. It worked that way for you, but it was because of football. So I kind of cringe at that a little bit. And yeah, he says he's working as hard as he can. Fine, okay. But I think a lot of it comes with reps. It comes with making mistakes at a lower level. And what he did in the Super Bowl was okay, but he had kind of a dog game to deal with them, and that game was dominated by Philadelphia. So, it's kind of funny just to hear them two talk because it really wasn't a competition. If it were a competition, their tapes would be analyzed by whoever makes those decisions at the network level, and they'd be analyzed on the quality of their work, not on who they are. So it's a little bit different than how Tom Brady rose through the ranks to become the starting quarterback at Michigan and the break that he was given with an injury to Drew Bledsoe in his second year in New England and how he took it from there and became a great quarterback and won a Super Bowl and won 6 more in his career. It's not apples to apples with what's going on here. All right, another interesting thing from Greg Olsen yesterday, and this is when he was on the Rich Eisen show hosted by Tom Pelissero, and he was reacting to a Travis Kelce interview that was done in GQ this past week. And Kelce's now 35 years old. He's been living the life, traveling the world, and everybody's eyes are on him with his Taylor Swift relationship. And he's done movies with Happy Gilmore 2. He's done a lot of television, hosting Saturday Night Live. He had an Amazon game show, Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity? He was in Ryan Murphy's Grotesquerie. He's been in a lot of stuff. And this is what happens. He got rich and famous and maybe a little fat and happy. And he admitted he got himself a little out of shape, and now he's lost some weight. And he said the past 2 years haven't been to his standard, though last year he did have like 90-some catches. But he says, I think I might have slipped a little bit because I did a little bit more focus in trying to set myself up. And opportunities came where I was excited to venture into a new world of acting and being an entertainer. He's also 35 years old. Eventually that takes a toll on your body as well. He says, quote, I don't say that I shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying that my work ethic is such that I have so much pride in how I do things that I never want the product to tail off. I feel like these past 2 years haven't been to my standard. He is now going into his 13th season with the Chiefs. Would seem that it would have been a good time to retire, right? I mean, he's got the Super Bowls. He's got the rich and famous girlfriend. I don't know if they'll get married or not, but he's living the life. Now would be the time to walk away. But he's not doing that. He's saying he's making a comeback this year. 97 receptions, 823 yards, and 3 touchdowns during the regular season. Not as many touchdowns, but a lot of tight ends would take that. This was Olsen reacting to that. Great tight end himself. I don't know, quite Hall of Fame tight end, but he had a great career. And these tight ends, they kind of all stick together. They have like this tight end U, which is hosted by George Kittle, and they all get together and just sort of hang out. So there's like this fraternity of tight ends. But this is Olsen reacting to those quotes I just read you from Travis Kelce.
Travis is kind of a victim of his own success. I think he ended his streak of 1,000 yards at 7. It was unheard of for guys to go that the level of consistency and production year in and year out, especially at a position like tight end where there is such attrition and injury rates and just the falling off the other side of the cliff in your mid-30s is pretty much the standard. He was defying all of that for the position. So then all of a sudden you don't get 1,000 yards a couple seasons in a row and people lose their minds. But I think when you look at what he's done in the postseason, what he's done, obviously in the regular season throughout his career, I mean, he's approaching the conversation. I think he's already there as when he retires, being the best guy to ever play the position. And I don't think I ever would have expected that. When I was coming up, it was Tony Gonzalez, and then Gronk kind of got onto the doorstep, and the longevity of Travis with the production. I never thought anybody would ever catch a Tony Gonzalez, because you're talking 17, 18 years of that level. It was unheard of. That's Travis. And then you factor in postseason success, Super Bowls, all the records that he has in the playoffs. His career really stands on its own. But, the guys like Kittle and Kelce, and those guys are just different. They're just uniquely talented. Their work ethic, their expectation that they hold of themselves. You just can't coach that. You can't teach that, right? There's a lot of guys in the league you can coach to run routes, but you can't find guys that just hold themselves to that level of expectation and accountability year in and year out and can play like that. So those guys are special. I think we've got a young crop of tight ends that are coming up behind them and have a chance, like Brock Bowers and Laporta and some of these young guys that have come in to the league the last couple of years. This could be a golden age of the NFL tight end position, as far as just across the board, every team pretty much has a legitimate guy. And that was not the case when I came into the league early in my career.
Yeah, it could be actually the golden age for the golden age tight ends, right? Because if you got Kelce having a big comeback year at 35, he's motivated to do that. Zach Ertz is in that territory. I got to tell you, when Zach Ertz signed last year with the Commanders and he was in training camp, I thought, maybe he'll be sort of a mentor to the younger guys. But what kind of production are you going to get out of him? He had been cut the year before in Arizona, couldn't find a job for the second half of the season, finally signed on with Detroit when they were playing in the NFC Championship game, and would have been available had they gone to the Super Bowl, but that was about it, and he had a relationship with Cliff Kingsbury, who had coached him when he was in Arizona, and maybe he could be the one that would teach the other tight ends the Kingsbury way and all that. Well, he turned out to be great, and he was a huge. And this was actually talked about. If all went right, he could be that veteran safety valve that Jaden Daniels would be able to rely on. I don't think anybody thought it would rise to that level. So maybe we are in the golden age of tight ends, and what Olsen is saying about the young guys coming up, also the older guys still productive, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with Kelce this year. If we had the comeback year by Zach Ertz, who's not at that level, a great tight end, but not a Hall of Fame tight end like Kelce, why not? Why not? Might be that kind of a year for him and other tight ends around the league. Quarterbacks used to be done when they were 35. That's not the case anymore. And Brady, set the thing out there so far at age 45 that you now have hope in places like Pittsburgh that Aaron Rodgers at 41 can still do it. I'll get to more on Rodgers in just a few minutes. I just saw this from Adam Schefter. He tweeted this out. I have to look up the full list, but he lists the 5 most valuable franchises in the NFL per Sportico's annual NFL valuations that are being released today. And not surprisingly, the Cowboys are number 1, but the margin by which they are number 1 kind of tells you what's going on with Micah Parsons and all the other mishigas that Jerry Jones is doing. Jerry Jones gets a lot of publicity for not signing Micah Parsons. Like, if Parsons was signed right now, I don't think we'd be paying as much attention to the Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys always get attention. That's like a mandate from ESPN. You must have your daily dose of Cowboys. But the valuation is $12.8 billion Okay, recognize this. 2 years ago, the Commanders in a major market, Washington, D.C., sold for a record price of $6.1 billion. 2 years later, a team in their division is worth more than twice that price at $12.8 billion. And it's not just that the Cowboys are number one, it's the team that's number two in the number two media market in the country, the Rams, at $10.4 billion. The Giants in the number one media market at number three at $10.2 billion. Patriots, and be interesting to see if they were still having the kind of success they had during the peak Brady years, but they're valued at $8.7 billion, and the 49ers at $8.6 billion. And in 2019, the value of the Dallas Cowboys, that's 6 years ago, the value was $5.1 billion. Now $12.8 billion. It's smart to invest in NFL franchises. That's a good business. And if you like the spotlight, like Jerry loves the spotlight, things could not be better than owning the most valuable team in the NFL by miles and being able to soak up the spotlight as the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys. Coming up, Ndamukong Suh has retired. He talked about his decision the other day, and we'll get to some of his comments on that, plus Orioles preview. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Johnny Cash had a hit more than 50 years ago called A Boy Named Sue. If you went up to Ndamukong Suh and sang that song, he might punch you in the face. I'm sure he's heard that plenty of times over the course of his life. But Ndamukong Suh has announced his retirement, and he did a South Beach session with Dan Le Batard, who does really good interviews. And I really was not familiar with Ndamukong Suh. He's soft-spoken. He's very calm. He doesn't in any way resemble in conversation what he was on the field. And let's face it, he was a dirty player. He was a really dirty player. Could he get to the Hall of Fame? Yeah, he might. 5-time Pro Bowler. Might be a case for him, but he hasn't played since 2022. Was thinking about coming back. Says he could still come back if he wanted to, but is moving on to other things, and including the business world. And like everybody else, he has his own podcast, which he was there to promote. But let's delve into Ndamukong Suh's life. He was a great player at Nebraska, and in 2010, he was the number 2 pick of the draft, and he was taken by the Detroit Lions. Lions weren't very good, and he certainly got himself a lot of attention in the early part of his career, and not in a good way. Before his second season, he had been flagged for 9 personal fouls, the most of any player in the league during that time. In his first 4 years, he was fined $216,000 by the league for 4 separate on-field violations. And in a poll of fellow players conducted by the Sporting News, Suh was named the dirtiest player in the NFL. He was named the NFL's least liked player in a Forbes publicized report in October of 2012. That's a long time ago, and I guess over the course of his career, he settled down a little bit, and in 2019, he was flagged only 5 times the entire season. But reputation is reputation, and I think if you had not heard him speak before, I don't think you'd understand exactly what his makeup is, because he's very smart. He is very focused on a business career. He's had long conversations with Warren Buffett, using that Nebraska connection there, and he's on to big things now. He's got interest in construction, the podcast. He's got a bunch of businesses that he's working on right now, and to meet him at this stage of his life, where he's still a big guy. He played at over 300 pounds, muscle. He's 6'4", big guy. Dan asked him the question about, how perception might not be reality when people first encounter him.
In some ways, were you trapped inside of the giant defensive tackle's body because that person really couldn't get into some of the creative curiosities? There wasn't time for it as much.
Yeah, yes and no. And I think as I got more comfortable with being out and about and kind of setting my own threshold, because there's a notion within the NFL where you're not really allowed, or they don't really want you to be focused on anything other than the NFL and your team and your focus being all about football. When they soon, and I just talked about this the other day about Caleb Williams, the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, let him live and let him have the opportunity to understand what the world is all about, because when he's able to leave and get away from football, he'll come back to football that much more sharper, because he's had all these other
such a different position, though. You were playing your position. You correct me if I have this wrong, because it's not. It's an unfair appraisal to say the offensive linemen like to say they put together the refrigerator, and the defensive linemen like to say we tear it apart. Yeah. So your skill took a great deal of skill and took a lot, but it's not what a quarterback requires away from just mentally the responsibility.
But there's only so many ways you can throw an out route. There's only so ways you can throw a go route. There's only so many ways I can play 3 technique. There's only so many ways I can play 2 technique. There's only so many ways I can play 1. So yes.
You're advocating for balance. You say,
no question,
work smarter instead of harder, go to the limits of where work smart is, and then have balance in your life so that you can be a complete human being.
1,000%. Because if you don't, you will burn out and you will most likely fail.
But was there a creative burning in there? Because you were investing in businesses. You were planning for your retirement long before you retired.
Yeah. And that's where I say ultimately having the path and the focus and the understanding, especially in the off season, and being able to be up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, train for 2-3 hours, get everything done, hit my recovery, be able to go through meetings, go to internships, do all these different particular pieces, and still have more time afterwards to be able to then say, hey, I can get back into football, and then I get a great night's rest and then go from there. So that's ultimately where I think people having that balance and that understanding, and versus just saying, only thing that I'm worried about is sports, which usually, again, like I said, you're setting yourself up for failure and really to burn out.
Okay. So, and that's also what you'll get sometimes in scholarship sports, especially revenue sports, football and basketball, that they'll steer you away from certain courses because they want your focus to be on that. And he may be exaggerating a little bit for the NFL, because there are people who have varied interests, but the focus that it takes to be great in anything, takes a lot of time and takes a lot of singular focus, which is what he's talking about. I mentioned the fines, $216,000 in his first 4 years, which was probably the bulk of it. But when Le Batard asked Ndamukong about the number that he rang up during his 13-year career in the NFL, he at least pretended like he didn't know.
I do not know that number, but I would imagine it's probably in the 250 to 500 range from that perspective. And I would probably say of the validity of me actually being fined for them, maybe 1%.
So 99% of the fines were just the nonsense.
We're playing a contact sport. Things happen.
So you take 1% responsibility. The rest of it is, look at what we're doing. Look at what you're asking us to do for a living.
I'm sure there's been people that have done a lot worse. So,
do you recall at any point in your career being up against somebody and saying, this person is simply stronger than I am? This strength is too much for me.
Wow. That's the first time I've ever been asked that question. It's usually about 2 or 3 people that I'd have to have that be the case. One individual person, maybe Leonard Davis.
Okay, that's good company. All right, because that's a lot of weight. That was also
if I don't remember, or if I remember correctly, I would say him and Doug Free, I believe, were on the same line in 2010 with the Cowboys. And I was like, wow. Yeah, that was some heavyweight on that double.
So not even late in your career, though, you could feel, okay, I'm a little weaker now because aging, because not even late in your career, huh?
If I ever felt that way, it was time to retire.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I'd fire in Keith and Charlie and Doc Sunil. So at that standpoint, no.
What a blessing, though. I can't imagine. If you've not talked with other players about this, I don't think there are a lot of players who would have the worldwide life experience of 18 years, and I never really felt like anyone was actually stronger than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was guys that are out there younger and stronger, but I think as you get wiser, you know how to use different muscles and parts of your body to gain leverage. I remember me and Aaron Donald, we were wrestling in, I think it was at the Air Force, because we were supposed to go down to Mexico to play in that game. So we went up to Colorado and we were playing, and we were messing around at practice or something like that. And he grabbed me. I was like, man, you're strong, but I had to pick him up and show him, like, I'm still big dog and still got some strength over you. So I think it's knowing how to use it from that perspective.
You didn't just describe Aaron Donald's strength as reminding him he's a little puppy and there's still a bigger dog.
He's a big, strong guy, but I also got him on height. So I got some.
Well, you also have about 30 pounds, or you?
Yeah, definitely got some weight on him as well. So,
but still, though, why would you and Aaron Donald come to just be wrestling around? Because I don't think mortal humans.
We were just joking around. Like we had fun. I mean, that was a fun year with him and all those guys, especially Akib and Marcus Peters. Man, I love those dudes. They were a fun bunch to be around.
I don't think, though, that mere mortals would totally understand whatever you and Aaron Donald understand about violence, about physical. So how would you explain it to somebody who cannot understand what it means for two people who know they're stronger than everyone else and faster than everyone else to test each other against themselves?
Think of a Tesla, Ferrari, and a couple freight trains colliding at their top speeds. That's what it's like.
Because you're both two people who also care about your craft and didn't come by that strength just naturally. Like you both know what it took to get there. And so you know what it is to tell Aaron Donald,
yes,
not yet.
Yeah. No, it's not even that. It's just a matter of, like, you understand, like, you know how to move, you know how to understanding what's the way to function. That's the key, is being able to maneuver yourself and put yourself in a position for the most success.
What do you miss
about football? Sundays. And I'd probably say Sunday nights and Monday nights from a football perspective. Those were, everybody's watching you. No other games are on. And you get to go out there and showcase your talent. Like I was on the football field last year versus, or commentating, because I work with Sky Sports, announcing games and in studio as well. And we were at the Minnesota versus San Francisco game, and like that energy on the football field is something special. So I would say I miss those as well. And fans talking crap to you because you're on the away team.
But explain it to us, though. When you say the energy is something else, it'll never be recreated. You will live another 40 years and you will not feel whatever that is.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is the lights, camera, action, everything is focused in on you and your teammates. And I always say this, I enjoyed being on the road. Like it was one of the most fun times to be able to be on the road and be able to have that excitement of just band of brothers going out there and competing. But the ultimate piece is you're out there and you're going to create havoc and you're going to make those fans go home upset because you came into their house and took care of business.
That's Ndamukong, part 2 of the conversation, South Beach Sessions with Dan Le Batard. Sue recently announcing his retirement. Last thing is about looking back on a career that lasted 13 years and really 2 more of maybe he'll play or maybe he won't. Did he reach expectations as the number 2 pick? Here's what he says about that.
I don't think I had any expectations other than to not be a bust. And I think that was something that I kind of looked at the whole Ryan Leaf situation and Jamarcus Russell situations and yes, they're quarterbacks. But ultimately, like, just to never have that title of being a bust. But I also wanted to pay homage to all the other people ahead of me. So if I'm not mistaken, Charles Haley and Russell Maryland both trained me, before I got drafted. And I remember vividly, especially spending a lot of time with Russell Maryland and then just seeing all of the successes he had, like living up to that standard and exceeding that, has always been my goal. And we actually, when I announced my retirement now a couple of weeks ago, he sent me a message and we went back and forth and I said, I just wanted to pay homage and respect to the way you guys played. And he's like, man, you've done that and exceeded. And that's probably one of the best compliments I've ever gotten.
Can you explain to people who don't understand, though, how serious you were about your craft, like the kind of meticulous care that it took? Because I suspect that people might believe that a holy man reached into your crib and gave you some sort of gift that he didn't give the rest of us. And it would underappreciate the amount of rigor that your efforts took.
Yeah, there's no question that I was definitely given a lot of favor from the man above, but ultimately that can only take you so far. You have to ultimately take those blessings and continue to grow upon them. And I think the one thing that he did give me, and my parents gave me as well, is the determination and focus and not afraid to be different. And I think when a lot of people wanted to go out and party and have fun, I chose not to, and I chose to get up early mornings. And I think I would always give people a hard time for not getting up early, like waking up at 10 o'clock and start working out. Like, I've completed my workout and I've already started 10 other things. And for me, that discipline and that drive week after week, month after month, year after year for 13 years straight, and beyond, because I was still preparing to go back in the last year and a half. And so for me, that is what people don't see and don't understand what goes into that. And the late nights on Thursday nights, or leaving a Monday night football game knowing you got a Sunday game, or leaving a Sunday night game knowing you have a Thursday game, and I'm up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning doing physical therapy with my guys and doing IVs and doing all these different particular pieces. Like, people don't see that and don't understand what goes into that. And I think more recently people have started to talk about the financial aspects of that, but it's the time and energy and details that go into that.
Well, take us through it, though. You realized at some point that the whole thing is a science, and it's an economy, that you are the glowing nuclear epicenter of your business at 3 o'clock in the morning when it needs fluids and repair.
Yeah. And I mean, sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber, and there's so many different modalities that people use. And so I think we'd have a whole episode on what it would take.
But you spent a lot of money on the economy of making sure that your body was taken care of, that all the healing things were taken care of.
100%. And having doctors, the best of the best on the East Coast and the West Coast, leaving a game, having a chipped bone in your knee and playing through that for an entire season, through a Super Bowl, playing on a torn PCL. And there's so many things that go into that people have no clue.
What's the worst of it that people don't know? What's the worst
of it? The worst of it?
Yeah, just when you're thinking about, I went to such lengths in order to make sure that I did not miss Sundays, because I thought pretty high on your list would have been on things you're proud of that you're available. Like,
yeah, but I see that as something that, outside of a freak accident, you should always be available. And I think that goes back to the pain tolerance comment of being able to understand, like, some people may consider it an injury, but I see it as a boo-boo. We got to move on. And like, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured, from that perspective. And for me, yeah, like, being available is what I was built on. Like, you didn't miss games in high school. You didn't miss games in college. Why are you missing games in the pro? And why are you taking yourself out? Granted, now if you don't end up being stupid and like playing in the 18th week because you want to go get statistics versus resting for something and trying to go win the playoffs and get to a Super Bowl. So,
but let me press on you. Let me press on you as the critic who's not in the arena. Explain the pain tolerance to me. I'm sitting here, and Ndamukong Suh needs to play harder in the fourth quarter. Explain to me the pain tolerance.
I think the best example is you've just played 15, 20 snaps straight, come out for one, and you're right back in. And or you're dead dog excited, and you got to find a way within 3 to 5 seconds to catch your breath and then get back, put your hand back in the dirt. Like those things, I don't think you can't explain them and give a true meaning behind them unless you actually experienced it.
You can't do it for me. Maximum exertion every down. You cannot be less strong than this person or you will end up under 4 people.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to like compare it to anything that you would do in the everyday life.
So how do you replace it though? Like what are the things that will give you the fulfillment that does every burst because you're challenging yourself to there's a challenge and a measurement every 15 seconds.
Yep. I don't need it, to be honest with you. I don't need to be fulfilled. I've been able to fulfill it for 13 years straight, and I know that I could do it if I wanted to do it. Even till this day, if I really wanted to go back, I could go back. Somebody made me an offer that made the most sense, and I didn't have to go to camp. I could show up halfway through the season and get into playoffs, and you give me a fair share of those game checks. Like I could pick up and go and get trained for that in 2 seconds.
Well, that may be far-fetched because, as Bill Parcells once said, once you start thinking about being retired, you're retired. And he has not played the last 2 years. He's at an advanced age. If he wanted to come back, and it sounds like it would have to be just money motivated, and I don't think that's enough. It sounds like he's kept track of his money pretty well and has got big plans for what he wants to do to make more money in business. Wouldn't happen. But, yeah, that tug of football remains with you, I think, for the rest of your life. I think if you reach that level, you're always going to feel like, yeah, just one more time. I remember working with Sam Huff when he was probably in his late 50s. Sam passed away several years ago from Alzheimer's disease, but he'd been a Pro Bowl linebacker, Hall of Fame linebacker with the Giants and the Redskins, and I always felt that Sam in his 50s felt like I could get back on the field for one series. He was in good shape, but he was in his 50s, and that's the tug that's for everybody, I think, who plays at that level, that they always are looking for. It's like a drug, the high that you get from making a big play in a big game. You just can't recapture that in anything else that you do. But I just thought that was an interesting insight into someone who, if you looked at him from the outside, wouldn't think that he is as insightful and as soft-spoken, really. I guess that's another thing. Speak softly, carry a big stick. Ndamukong Suh had a great career in the NFL, and now he's moving on to other things. This is one to keep an eye on. The Oklahoma quarterback, his name is John Mateer. Like most quarterbacks these days, he's a transfer. He was at Washington State, and now he's going to be the quarterback at Oklahoma, and he's under an investigation after screenshots of past references to sports gambling on his Venmo account surfaced this week. He's denied being involved in gambling, said instead it was inside jokes with friends. He says, the allegation that I once participated in sports gambling is false. My previous Venmo descriptions did not accurately portray the transactions in question, but were instead inside jokes between me and my friends. These were transactions that were made November 20th, 2022, and he was a freshman at Washington State. Both transactions allegedly made to a Venmo account to Richard Roten, believed to be a teammate at Washington State at the time. And that's a common thing. You borrow some money or you sell something, you give a teammate money on Venmo, and I guess some of the teammates were making jokes about that. We'll see where this goes, but this is now being investigated, and he's excellent player. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns last year. Oklahoma comes into the season 18, and they open up at home against Illinois State. The question is, was this put out there by another team in the conference? They're now in the vaunted SEC. Is there other SEC stuff going on behind the scenes? Who knows? But school officials, according to Pete Thamel, who covers college sports for ESPN, school officials became aware of this late Monday night. They're looking into the situation. It doesn't mean that the school will necessarily find anything. I don't know if it reaches the level of the SEC, and then for whatever the NCAA is worth these days, and it ain't worth much, maybe it gets to that point. But these are things that other schools might be tempted to just, trying to float out there. Hey, look what we found from 2022 for the starting quarterback for Oklahoma. How about that? So we'll see where it goes. It's a really dicey situation in college sports. And this goes back like 30 years ago. Maryland had a quarterback who was doing some offshore betting, and they found out about it. This is when, there was no betting on college sports at the time, and he was suspended for half the season. He could not play in the first 5 games of the year because of that. I think he got a cup of coffee, and the NFL may have played for Tampa Bay. But, now it's everywhere, and it's on your phone all the time. You didn't have cell phones then. Now the temptation there is crazy. It's really wild. All right, we're going to do Orioles preview coming up. Katie Griggs, who is the president of the team, will join us. Got to ask her this question about a team that's, 13 games under 500 and was expected to not only be in the playoffs this year, but win some playoff games, which they have not done the last 2 years. And now the manager has been fired. They were sellers at the trade deadline. They still got some great young stars on this team, like Jackson Holliday and Rutledge and all the Rutschman. I mean, all the players that they have are there's some great prospects there, but the team has not performed. And we'll get to her thoughts on how they're handling that in the front office as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.